George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. We are so pleased to be joined by a great friend, Linda Lowen. She and I, back in the day, and can you believe that was almost nearly 20 years ago or so, like that, Linda, where we hosted WCNY TV. I don't know which show was it. Was it Our CNY? Was that
It
the
was
one?
our CNY, and I was 16 at the time,
Yeah,
George.
you were right.
And
And I was
you were 17, I think.
17, I think. And so
Yeah.
we had that fun together. One of the best writers anywhere. You teach writing. You're a prolific writer. And but one of the events of the past week have certainly, Linda, caused pause, especially for you, pain and hurt, especially for the Asian American Pacific Islander community in wake of the attacks in Atlanta, but not just those attacks, because for a lot of us who've been watching the news, these anti-Asian attacks have been sporadic and periodic throughout the year. Is that, can I say both of those? You're the writer. They have been periodic, let's put it that way, where people have been randomly attacked on the street. That's what I was probably thinking when I said sporadic. And so, Linda, first of all, welcome to the show once again. And actually used to hang out with me on WSYR back in the day too. So we have a long history.
We do. I'm so glad you asked me to come, and especially to speak to the New Inspiration Nation, because there's one of the things that has always been difficult is that I understand. Yes, you and I both experience racism, but we've experienced different levels of it. And I think when you look at what's going on with Black Lives Matter, I mean, the reality is living while Black is a very dangerous thing. Living while Asian hasn't necessarily been dangerous, and sporadic over the generations, really. Sometimes more so, sometimes less. I mean, now I have more and more friends who are Japanese American who have been through the internment camp process. My mother came over here well after the war, married an American father. And so I've sort of had one foot in the world of white proximity. My husband is Italian American. My father is white Brooklyn born Jew. So the difficulty lies in, I think, one of the issues about expressing outrage about racism is it's sort of like what I call the queen for a day approach, which is who has the worst story, who is most who has the right to tell their story. And the reality is that all people of color have struggled with this for a long time. I mean, from the moment Trump announced his presidency and said Mexicans are rapists, that puts Latinx in the crosshairs. Blacks have been in the crosshairs for a number of years. Asians are now in the crosshairs. But also, too, there's also been this very intentional divisiveness sown by certain entities that want to see Blacks pitted against Asians, pitted against Latinx. And that's what makes it difficult because, Asians have that model minority label. And so when you are not necessarily as oppressed, you don't speak out as much. But here's the reality. Every Asian woman I know has gone through that Tokyo Rose Tiger Lily stuff, which is, there's this bizarre sexualizing of Asian women to the point at which you're asking for it because you were born Asian. And now I think people are able to articulate. So when I heard that the Atlanta police officer, who has his own issues, said, "Oh no, this is not a crime of hate." I'm like, buddy, you haven't grown up and you have not walked in my shoes. You have not lived my life. Oh yes, it's definitely a hate crime. Definitely.
Linda, and then the other thing that complicates things, if you will, you've got in some subsections of the Asian community, this history with the Black community, right? In terms of this whole idea of the Korean and Black communities and in some of the Asian countries and how they depict even African Americans, some of these toothpaste and some of these brands, how they're depicted in Japan and other countries. So you do have, like, within that, there's also that tension. But here's what I will say. Even if one, and the other thing I learned is that let me finish that thought. But here's what I will say. There's no oppression Olympics, if you will, right?
That very good way to put it, George. Right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So, and the other piece is one of my colleagues at work shared with me, I guess there was this law passed that in order for and I forgot the name of the law, but I'll look it up. Where maybe I'll find it. Oh no, he put it in a Zoom chat, so I don't know where it is. But there was a law that when Asian women were immigrating into the country, do you know this law I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
I do. I do. It was it was to prevent prostitution. Yeah.
Right, right. They had to prove that that's not why they were coming over, and a specific law targeting Asian women because and that so you had to prove that. That was like your way of saying I'm not coming here to turn tricks, if you will.
Right. Well, and that's the thing because I've posted about this on Facebook, and I usually don't go places because you know what? I'm a woman of a certain age, and I'm like, I don't need that crap in my life. But I did post about it. And I did say, these are the ways in which you can talk to BIPOC people and to support them and not to bring your own story into it. But it's funny because I got into a tussle with another prominent writer. She's a white person and she wants to make it about the sex trade. Now, and she has worked as a sex worker, and then she went into another career and was outed by the New York Daily News, and Governor Cuomo called her by name. I'm not going to mention the woman's name. It's her life, it's her right. But the thing is, she wanted to make it about sex workers, and I said and I didn't get into the whole thing with her. But number one, nobody has yet stated that these massage parlors did engage in any covert sexual activity, and they've highlighted a few people in them, and these were as far as we know law-abiding citizens. So that's the first thing, that there's automatically, well, if Asian women were killed, they must be sex workers. Number one. Number two, it doesn't matter whether they were sex workers or nail technicians. They were people, all people. I mean, George Floyd, Sandra Bland, Brown and Taylor, nobody should be killed for the texture of their hair, the color of their skin. But there is always the desire to sort of, well, it's not just this, it's also this. And it's racism. It's
Yeah,
racism.
straight up.
It's racism.
Straight up.
Yeah, straight up.
Linda, and you also wrote in your post about being in pain around these issues, right? But then I also heard you even today almost reluctant to say that we've been in pain around these issues, that these issues cause me stress and I'm somewhat distraught by them. The reluctance you
Because
explain, right?
the oppression Olympics, as you said it. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. I mean, who has the right? Who has the right? And honestly, here's the other truth. I'm just going to say it. If you had thousands of Asians walking in the streets, believe me, I don't think we would be gassed, or I don't think we'd be hit with rubber bullets. Why? Because Asian men are pussies and they're emasculated. Because
Right.
Asian women are subservient. And if a white man says to me, get down on your knees, they think I'm going to do it. And I have told people for years, part of the reason why I went into, possibly subconsciously went into broadcast, and part of the reason why I'm never been a skinny woman. I've had some excess weight on and off. It's partly because I'm fighting against that stereotype. You should be skinny and you should be quiet and you should bow down to me. I mean, trust me, you've met my husband. We're fighting over who wears the pants in the family. So we're always fighting against stereotypes.
What do we do with this time in this moment? Because part of this was fueled by the former president, the China, what do you call it? The China
The
virus.
China virus, which,
Right,
you know
right.
what? There is an owner of a media outlet in this town who has said repeatedly on Facebook, China virus, China virus, China. Been doing it for a long time. Not
Mm.
going to out that person. That person knows who they are. Probably people around that person knows who they are. In other words, that's fine. You know
Why would
what?
you out them? Why should they get protection?
Yeah, you know what? Libel. I'll tell you off the air, George. I'll
Okay,
tell you off
okay,
the air.
okay.
And you know what? I really thought, am I going to, am I going to
Wait, but
educate this person?
let me
And I
ask,
was employed by this person. I was employed by this
well,
person.
hold on a second. If the person is putting something publicly in a space and you name that, why is that libel?
Because obviously that person can take it off at any time, and because you know what, I'm not equipped to pay an attorney at this point to defend myself. But you know what, the individuals who follow this person know exactly who it is. No, and no, made no bones about, not said it all the time. Said it all the time.
Yeah, see, we're letting them off the hook, Linda.
Who says it's a man?
Oh,
Well, yeah. Who even says it's a binary individual? No, but what I'm saying is this. This is the problem, and you know as well as I do. We are all fearful. We're all fearful because you know what? people can go after us. So again, Asians fighting and, Asians protesting in the streets. I don't think there'd be gas and rubber bullets.
Right.
I don't think so, because again, we are a subservient, quiet people. But hey, guess what? Not anymore. I'm so glad that there's a public forum for this. But again, I'm just sitting in my home talking to you, George. Am I out on the street? No.
It's a hate crime, isn't it?
It's a hate crime. Absolutely, it's a hate crime. Because
Straight up.
the guy went to 3 separate spas. I'm sure that there are other places where you can go. I mean, if you need to stop the temptation, there's other temptations.
So
He
he went
also
there to
just
stop.
bought a gun that morning. Just
So
bought a
that
gun that morning.
is that the claim that went there to stop his
Oh
temptation?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And of course,
so he couldn't just stay home and you know what I was going to say.
oh yeah, well, you know what? He had been staying at home. He had been going through treatment. I mean, there are people who've said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that guy in treatment, and I didn't expect that would happen." And he bought a gun that morning. You
Hmm.
know what? In most situations, when somebody buys a gun that morning, who are they out there killing? They're killing Black folks. They're killing Asian folks.
Yeah, and of course
Something triggered him.
the random attacks on the street. I was talking to someone and he said to me that he's not so much concerned for himself and the younger generation, but he's concerned about his mother, right?
And I love seeing that, because I would technically be a woman of that age, and I've very very deliberately joined circles where people are talking, and the voices that dominate the conversation are people of color, and it's been fantastic to hear them, because they're letting rage out, and they're saying, no white commentary, please. And I know that's going to offend a lot of people, but here's the reality: every single space in the world, in this culture that we live in the United States of America, white folk come on and say, "Hey, but you got to hear my side." And just once, let's let people who have suffered from personal experience actually do the speaking, and everybody else, it's okay to listen. You learn a little something.
So many of us are, we stand in solidarity, with hashtag stop Asian hate, stand with the Asian community. Um, what what is your hope from this moment? That how does this solidarity move forward for BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color?
We don't find it acceptable to move forward with a candidacy of somebody who immediately isolates and names a group of people and calls them rapists and murderers, or calls one side good people and the other side bad people, or labels. I mean, we've become very, very good at using hate. It's the gamification of hate. It's so wonderful to be part of a group of people where I can say things that are hateful, and I am celebrated for that. I consistently believe still that we would like to love and trust each other. And I now understand, after many years on this earth, that people who hate at that level are deeply wounded people. And it is very hard to love those folks, but they suffer in their own ways. And there is a greater issue at large, which creates these environments, which creates these people to feel empowered to express hate. I think what we have to do, and I've had so many white folks come on my page and say, "I'm an ally, I'm an ally." You know what? Next time somebody says China flu, you say to them, "Hey, you are labeling something, a disease that happened to make its first appearance in Wuhan, China, but that does not mean it is the China flu. Don't do that." And again, it's very hard to do that. But the police officer himself, the communications guy who said, "Oh, he's just having a bad day," what was he promoting on his Facebook page? The Corona 19 virus t-shirts that said, "This came from China,
Right.
CHY-NA."
And Linda Lowen, we always appreciate your insights, your thoughts, and your commitment to having your voice heard, but also amplifying the voices of others. Linda Lowen, writer, where can people find your work?
Yeah, you know what? I have 100 words in a book called Tiny Love Stories, published by from the New York Times. Yeah, it's actually, you can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can read 100 words about my marriage. That's about as far as I'll go with where you can find me. Yeah, I'm out there. Google. Yeah.
Linda Lowen. Linda, thank you so much. Always good to see you.
Thank
Insp-
you, GK.
Inspiration for the nation.